Grandpa Joe had been making his famous chocolate cake for 43 years, but he'd never once thought about keeping it for himself, until the day his granddaughter told him he didn't deserve any. He stood in the kitchen doorway, powdered sugar still dusting his worn flannel shirt, watching 8-year-old Emma slide the cake across the counter toward her mother with that smug little grin that made his chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with his heart medication. "Cakes for the real moms," she announced, her voice dripping with the casual cruelty only children can truly master. His daughter-in-law, Patricia, laughed, not a nervous laugh or an uncomfortable titter, but a genuine, delighted sound that echoed through the kitchen like breaking glass. She didn't correct Emma, didn't even glance his way to see if the words had landed. She just cut herself a generous slice and complimented the frosting. Joe's hands, gnarled from 74 years of living and 35 years of carpentry, gripped the doorframe. He'd raised his son alone after Margaret died. 22 years of packed lunches and permission slips, of parent-teacher conferences he attended in sawdust-covered work boots, of birthday cakes made from scratch because store-bought didn't have enough love in them. He'd been there through every fever, every nightmare, every heartbreak. He'd been the one waiting up when Thomas came home past curfew, the one teaching him to shave, to drive, to be a man. And when Thomas got married and had Emma, Joe had stepped back, playing the supporting role he thought grandpas were supposed to play. But he'd still been there, every Tuesday and Thursday, picking Emma up from school when Patricia had her yoga class. Every Sunday dinner, arriving early to help cook and staying late to clean. He'd taught Emma to ride a bike, to fish, to make pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse. And now, standing in his own kitchen, because they were at his house, eating his cake, he was being told he wasn't real enough to deserve a slice. "I think I'll skip dessert," Joe said quietly. No one responded. Patricia was already scrolling through her phone, and Emma had turned on the living room television. Thomas was outside taking a work call, as he always seemed to be during family gatherings. Joe walked past them, through the living room where framed photos of 3 generations smiled down from the walls, and out onto the back porch. The spring evening was cool, the kind of temperature Margaret used to say was just right for thinking. He lowered himself into his rocking chair, the one he'd built the summer after she passed, and let himself actually think for the first time in years. When had he become invisible? When had his contributions transformed from parenting to mere helping, from essential to supplementary? He'd been so focused on being supportive, on not being the overbearing parent who couldn't let go, that he'd somehow let himself become a convenient accessory to his son's family. The screen door creaked open. Joe didn't turn around. "Dad, you okay?" Thomas's voice carried that distracted tone Joe had grown accustomed to, the sound of someone asking a question while already composing their next email. "Fine," Joe said. "You sure?" Patricia said you seemed upset about the cake thing. "Emma's just being silly. You know how kids are." Joe did know how kids are. He'd raised one, after all. Alone. But he also knew that kids learn their attitudes somewhere, absorb them from the adults around them like second-hand smoke. "Thomas, when's the last time you introduced me as Emma's parent?" "What, Dad? That's a weird question." "Grandparent, then. When's the last time you told someone that I helped raise her, that I'm not just the old man who shows up for Sunday dinner?" The porch boards creaked as Thomas shifted his weight. "Where is this coming from?" "Your daughter just told me I'm not a real parent, in my own kitchen, eating cake I spent 2 hours making." Joe finally turned to look at his son, and your wife laughed. "Dad, she's 8. She doesn't understand." "She understands exactly what she's been taught, that I'm Grandpa, the free babysitter, the guy who shows up when it's convenient and disappears when it's not someone whose feelings matter, not someone who deserves basic respect in his own home." Thomas ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Joe recognized from countless difficult conversations over the years. "You're being dramatic. It's just cake." "It's not about the cake." The words came out sharper than Joe intended. He took a breath, softened his voice. "It's about being taken for granted. It's about you bringing your family to my house every Sunday, eating food I cook, and never once thinking about what I might need. When's the last time you asked how I'm doing? And I don't mean the "hey, how are you" toss out while checking your phone. When's the last time you actually wanted to know? Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Inside, Joe could hear Emma laughing at whatever show she was watching. The sound that used to bring him joy now felt distant, like something happening in another family's house. "I didn't realize you felt this way," Thomas finally said. "I didn't either, not until today." Joe stood up, his knees protesting the movement. "I think you should take your family home." "Dad." "I'm not angry, son. I'm just done. Done pretending this arrangement works for everyone when it only works for you. Done being invisible in my own life." Thomas opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "What do you want from me?" It was such a simple question, but Joe realized he didn't have a simple answer. He wanted respect. He wanted recognition. He wanted his granddaughter to understand that families came in all shapes, that love wasn't measured by biology or gender, and that the man who'd been there for every important moment of her life deserved better than a smug dismissal. "I want you to think about what you're teaching your daughter," Joe said. "I want you to consider that maybe, just maybe, the way your family treats me isn't okay, and I want you to decide if you're going to do anything about it." Inside, Patricia called out that they should probably get going, that Emma had school tomorrow. Joe heard the relief in Thomas's voice when he agreed, saw how quickly his son retreated from the uncomfortable conversation. Joe stood on the porch and watched them gather their things. Emma emerged with her tablet, not looking up, not saying goodbye. Patricia gave him a distracted wave. Thomas paused at the car, looked back at the house like he wanted to say something, then got in and drove away. The house was quiet, quieter than usual somehow. Joe went back inside, to the kitchen where half a chocolate cake sat on the counter, perfect and untouched by him. He cut himself a generous slice, poured a glass of milk, and sat down at the table alone. The cake was delicious. It always was. Margaret's recipe never failed. But as he ate, Joe made a decision. Next week, if Thomas called to confirm Sunday dinner, Joe would be busy. The week after that too. He'd spent 43 years baking cakes for other people. Maybe it was time to figure out what he wanted to do with the rest of his Sundays. His phone buzzed, a text from Thomas. "Sorry about tonight, let's talk soon." Joe read it, then set the phone down without responding. He'd talk when Thomas was ready to actually listen. Until then, he had a whole cake to himself, a quiet house, and the strange, unsettling freedom of being done with being invisible. He took another bite and smiled.